It's just a house. Stop being so dramatic. That single sentence from my mother shattered the illusion of family I had held inside me with a loud crash. Even from far away, it lingered deep in my heart. It was a shock strong enough to instantly render words like warmth and trust meaningless. I'm Selena, 30 years old. After building a career as a nurse, I now volunteer as part of a medical camp in Rwanda, East Africa. The makeshift tents used for treatment become like saunas in the heat, and with unstable electricity and poor sanitation, there's a constant tension in providing medical care. Still, I chose this path myself. There's no doubt it's harsh, but not once have I regretted being here or choosing this life. That day after finishing the morning procedures, I took off my sweat-soaked mask and sipped some water. The cold water seeped into my parched throat. I looked up at the sky. It was endlessly blue, endlessly distant. In that moment of quiet amid the business, what crossed my mind was that house in Ohio, the house Lucas and I had chosen together, even taking part in its design. When I returned home, I was finally supposed to settle down there. But around that time, without my knowledge, something unthinkable had begun. I later heard that one weekend my sister Mira had come home for the first time in a while. She carried gifts in both hands and apparently wore an oddly modest expression. "Hey Mom, Dad, I have something to discuss." Sitting on the couch, Mira began speaking while fiddling with her phone. "It's going to cost way more than I initially calculated. I don't want to compromise on the dress, and I want the food to be something our guests can truly enjoy. I want to focus on the floral arrangements and table settings too for the honeymoon. We're thinking of Bali, and we still need to furnish the new apartment. All in all, I'm sure it's going to go over $30,000. Silence fell over the living room. My mother and father exchanged a glance for just a moment before my mother spoke. "All right, Mira, I understand how you feel. We'll figure something out." Her voice carried a sigh of hesitation, but her words were more than enough to be taken as approval. "Thank you. I knew I could count on you." Smiling, Mira stood up and headed toward the entrance, clearly satisfied. After the door closed, my parents silently moved to the kitchen, and each took a seat with a glass of chilled iced tea in the quiet house. Their eyes met again. "How are we supposed to come up with that kind of money?" My father's voice was low. It hinted at many similar conversations they had likely had before. "We can sell Selena's house." "Hey, are you serious?" "I'm serious. She went overseas and we don't even know if she's coming back. The house has been vacant ever since she left for Rwanda." "Don't you think it's better to act now you need her signature? What are you planning to do?" My mother peeled off an old document that had been stuck to the fridge with a magnet. It was a copy of a mortgage form I had once sent them. It had my handwriting, my signature style. Everything was there. If I copy this, it'll look real enough. We scanned her ID to remember. After a moment of silence, my father muttered, "That's completely illegal." "I know, but if it's for Mira's wedding, I'll do it." Apparently that's what my mother said with finality. A few days later, she contacted a familiar real estate agent and lied, saying she had received my verbal consent. She secretly forged the title documents using the home computer and scanner to the title company representative. She claimed my daughter is working overseas, and she sent the signed documents by a scan, and she and my father mimicked my signature using old paperwork of mine to create the contract. There was no verification by a notary public, and the sale proceeded with a forged signature. The selling price was $400,000. A portion of that money was allocated to fund Mira's wedding honeymoon and preparations for her new life. My parents believed they had bought happiness for the family. To them, it might have been a necessary decision or a temporary fix, but to me, it was the moment my life was trampled upon. Afternoons later, I had just finished seeing patients and was taking a break when I opened my phone and my inbox was an unfamiliar email. The subject line read, "Confirmation regarding your property sale." I didn't recognize the name of the real estate agent, but the moment I read the content, my knees went weak. "We are contacting you regarding the sale of your property based on the documents submitted. We are proceeding with the final steps of the ownership transfer. However, since the property is jointly owned with Mr. Lucas, we will also require his signature and identification documents. A sale, my house." My vision darkened. I immediately called Lucas, but it was news to him too. As a co-owner, he hadn't been contacted at all. I quickly reached out to the title company representative who had sent the email. Still unsettled. I asked who had submitted the documents. The person on the line hesitated for a moment after placing me on hold with, "Let me check." They returned with a clear and firm answer. All the documents were submitted by Mrs. Alicia Bennett and Mr. Victor Bennett. "Are they your family members?" In that instant, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was my parents, after all. Shaking with anger, I called my mother. Answer me right now. Did you sell the house? It was Ramirez's wedding. You wouldn't help, so we had no choice. You forged my signature and sold my house without permission. What were you thinking? We're family, aren't we? Mira is your sister, since you wouldn't do anything. We stepped in. Could you really watch your sister be humiliated before I could respond? My mother raised her voice. It's just a house. Stop being so dramatic. At that moment, I heard something crack deep inside my chest with every heartbeat. It felt like something cold was seeping from that fracture. Just a house, you see. I finally spoke, but my voice was shockingly quiet even to myself. Do you have any idea what I went through to buy that house in Rwanda fighting disease and hunger? Still dreaming of the future? I thought I had finally found a place to return to. And you call that just a house? Well, there's no way you'll get away with it. Face reality. Family is about supporting each other instead of playing the saint overseas. Why don't you care more about the people close to you? Her words no longer sounded like those of a mother. They sounded like a spell used to crush someone hiding behind the word family. It was so far removed from the definition of family I had believed in. Quietly, anger welled up from deep within me, and after hanging up the phone, I took a deep breath. My life is not something that can be rewritten for someone else's convenience. I could no longer stand by in silence and let this happen. I decided to confront this injustice for the sake of my own dignity. Then I immediately called Lucas. After a few rings, I heard his voice. Selena. Lucas, I'm sorry, but I need to talk to you urgently. Something terrible is happening with the house without even pausing to study my breath. I explained everything that my parents had forged my signature and were trying to sell the house without permission. That they intended to use the proceeds for Mira's wedding honeymoon and new life. After a brief silence, Lucas quietly responded, It's okay. The title hasn't been officially transferred yet. Your name and mine are both still on it. That means if either of us objects, we should be able to stop the sale. I'll help you. His words gave me the first faint glimmer of hope in my chest. I felt as if I had finally found the first step towards standing back up on my own. The house Lucas and I bought was under both our names on the title and the contract. There were signature fields clearly labeled for both owners with only my forged signature. The sale couldn't be finalized. My parents didn't understand that system at all. I immediately contacted the title company and formally declared that I did not consent to the sale and that the signature was forged. I also submitted documents to prove that Lucas had not given his consent. Word of this must have reached my mother somehow. Soon her phone calls became incessant. Every time I checked my phone during breaks and volunteering voicemails and messages had piled up. What have you done? If you hadn't interfered, everything would have gone smoothly. Why would you ruin your sister's once-in-a-lifetime moment? Every message was one-sided, filled with blame while ignoring my feelings and circumstances. When I didn't respond, I began receiving curt emails from my father as well, saying, I'm disappointed and you let us down. Then I later heard something else, something even more disturbing. A relative quietly confided in me. Your mother has been telling people that Celine has been emotionally unstable lately and can't make sound decisions. Apparently, the very act of stopping the sale was being framed as erratic behavior. My father didn't deny it either. In fact, he was reportedly saying things like, our family's been torn apart because Selena refused to help with Mira's wedding. As if I were the reason the family was falling apart. What shocked me even more was my sister's reaction. Mira began posting on social media claiming my sister hurt me. Hash wedding denied sister hash. That happened as fast as dried hash wounded bride. The photos included a face pretending to wipe away tears. A fitting shot in a wedding dress she claimed to have bought herself and parts of the venue decorations. She must have been fed baseless stories by our parents. Selena was against your wedding from the beginning. She doesn't want you to be happy. Not only did she refuse to help with the expenses, but she tried to destroy the wedding entirely. Mira must have believed those words. She seemed to truly think I didn't bless her marriage and was judging her. Misunderstandings and emotions snowballed, and she began painting herself as the victim in her story on social media. Sympathetic comments poured into her posts, and she looked almost proud of it. But it didn't end there. She also poisoned her fiancé and his family against me, saying I was a troublesome sister who tries to control the family and someone who only cares about her own career and looks down on others. As a result, James's family became wary, and soon Jazz himself grew confused, rapidly straining the relationship between the two families. Then, one night, I received a video call from Lucas. Behind him was the living room of the house. It looked familiar, but also made my chest stir uneasily. Jace and Mira broke off their engagement. He said it so suddenly that I just stared at the screen. Why I happened to see Mira? Social media. She was posting stuff like wedding denied by my sister and wounded bride. It was getting out of hand. So I reached out to Jace through a mutual friend. Lucas and Jace worked in the same industry and had a few mutual friends from before. I told him everything, what was done to you, what happened to the house, and that all the evidence was there. Jace went silent. Then later he apparently hired a private investigator and looked into it himself. Lucas. His voice was calm, but beneath it I could sense his anger and disbelief. Attempted fraud, forged documents. Everything your parents did came to light. Then Jason's mother said we can't marry into a family like that. And the engagement was called off. I could only stare at the screen, speechless. Mira had tried to play the victim on social media only to destroy the illusion she built with her own hands. Yet I felt not an ounce of sympathy with the engagement. Broken Mirror lost everything. The already booked venue catering, floral arrangements, photography, and the honeymoon in Bali were all cancelled. And the future she envisioned collapsed with them. Naturally, she had no means to pay the cancellation fees, and invoices from each vendor piled up, eventually going unpaid. Though she had once smiled brightly on social media, her posts gradually decreased until she finally left one brief message. I apologized for the trouble and made her account private. A few days later, I received an official response from the title company. Since one of the co-owners has submitted a clear statement of non-consent, the sale will be considered invalid. The sale was stopped then and there. The buyer was informed of the situation, and the contract was voided. The $400,000 in proceeds my parents believed they had secured turned out to be nothing but a mirage. Considering how close I came to losing everything, even that was more than enough salvation. But just then a call came from my parents. My mother shouted on the phone, "We used your name because we had to. We never imagined you'd interfere with the sale because you had to. So you forged my signature without permission." I replied calmly. "You're overseas, I didn't think you'd notice the details anyway." "So, because I wouldn't notice, you thought anything was okay. Is that how your version of family works?" After a pause, my father muttered in a low voice, "Let's just stop, Alicia. If we go to the police, maybe we can claim there was a valid reason to justify it." I forced the words out, holding back my anger. "What you did is fraud, and you did it while pretending to be family. You have no right to rewrite my life." Still, my parents didn't back down. "We were the ones who got tricked," my mother said, and astonishingly filed a false police report. She claimed an imposter using our daughter's name interfered with the sale. When I heard that, I gasped. I couldn't believe my own parents could lie so easily and shamelessly. That's when I made up my mind. I immediately called Lucas Selena. His calm voice came through the receiver. "I need to talk. Please listen now." "Yeah, of course. What's going on?" My mother. "She reported me to the police claiming I'm a fraud. She said someone is using Selena's name to interfere with the sale. It's a complete lie. They're trying to frame me to justify what they did." After a few seconds of silence, Lucas spoke quietly. "I can't believe it." "No, I don't want to believe it, but honestly, I'm not even surprised anymore. I can't stay silent any longer. They almost stole my house. They used the word family to manipulate my life however they wanted. And now they're trying to turn me into a criminal." I could hear Lucas's breathing become heavier. "Let's take legal action." That one sentence filled my chest with warmth. What? What they did is clearly illegal. Forging signatures, submitting fraudulent documents, and now filing a false police report. This isn't just your issue. They used my name too. This is our fight, thank you. Lucas, we have the evidence, the documents, the emails, the recorded conversations. Let's go through a proper lawyer and file charges for fraud. Yeah, I was thinking that's the only way to. To be honest, it's been eating at me watching you go through all this while I just stood by. But you've been so strong. I want to stand with you now. I was speechless knowing someone was willing to fight beside me. Just that made something deep in my heart feel lighter. That night, I gathered the necessary evidence and, working with Lucas, submitted everything to a lawyer. Proof of the false police report, the forged signatures required for the sale, the procedural violations committed by my parents, and Lucas is testimony. We proceeded cautiously, but deliberately. A few weeks later, my parents were formally charged with attempted fraud, forgery of private documents, abetment of false entries in public documents, and false accusations. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time I felt like I had made it to the starting line. That evening, my smartphone vibrated. My mother's name appeared on the display. I had a bad feeling, but I answered the call. "Selena, what are you thinking? Suing your own parents?" Are you insane? She was yelling right from the start. The one who's seen here is me. What you did was a crime. What crime you're dragging your parents into court? What kind of heartless person does that? Let me ask you this. If your family forged your name, sold your house, and then accused you of fraud when you tried to stop it, would you stay silent and forgive them? We did it for Mira. Isn't she pitiful? The wedding, the trip. Everything's ruined. So you used my life as the price for her pity. Without asking me a single thing, you made every decision on your own. From the other end of the line. My father's heavy voice cut in. You're being too cold. This could have been resolved with a simple conversation. You should think about how this looks to others. If it could have been resolved with a conversation, then why didn't you talk to me from the start? You forged documents, manipulated my life, and you still think that's what a parent should do. My mother burst out in emotion. Ungrateful. Who do you think raised you? The only reason you can do whatever you want in Rwanda is because we supported you. I didn't come this far because of your sacrifices. I worked, I studied, I built this life with my own hands. You have no right to claim you supported me. If this goes to court, that's the end of our relationship. Are you really willing to go that far? Yes, I'm fine with that. I could sense my mother was speechless. I've been bound by the word family all my life, but not anymore. Even a family has no right to trample on someone's life. I will protect my name and my life. Then do as you wish. Her voice was faint. I didn't raise a daughter like you. That goes both ways. Click. The call ended. I gently placed the phone on the table. My hands were shaking, but deep inside I felt calm. For the first time, I was truly ready to take back my life. Next, I would head to the courthouse. Even if the opponent was my own parents, there are lines that should never be crossed. I was ready to prove everything in a court of law, but life didn't pause for litigation. I was still in Rwanda, sleeping in a canvas tent and spending my days under a corrugated roof clinic where the generator throbbed like a slow heartbeat. We ran triage in the mornings, fevers first, wounds second, anything that looked like pregnancy complications straight to the back with the midwife. I took blood pressures, started IV lines, explained antibiotics in simple phrases and gestures, and learned to read fear in a face even before the translator caught up. The work steadied me. It kept the anger from climbing my throat and turning into something that would burn me from the inside out. Nights were different. When the heat finally bled off the red dirt and the sky turned to black velvet spiked with stars, the camp grew quiet. That's when my thoughts moved like water toward the same rock the trial waiting for me at home. I'd lie on my cot and hear my mother's voice from that call, sharp practiced final. Ungrateful. I didn't raise you. You're not family. Those words were a pair of shears. They cut the last threads of obligation I'd spent years trying to knot. Grief would swell, then settle. I kept returning to the same answer. If the people who made you refuse to name you as theirs, you get to name yourself and protect that name. When the mission ended, we packed the crates, hugged our local team goodbye, and climbed into the plane at dawn. As we banked, I watched the land tilt hills like folded cloth, a ribbon of water turned to copper by sunrise. I closed my eyes and told myself quietly, firmly, "You're going to be okay." By the time I landed in the US, autumn had arrived with a wet wind and the smell of cold metal. I stepped out of the airport and everything I'd kept politely at arm's length rushed up to meet me. I didn't run. A few days later, I met my attorney on the courthouse steps. The building was all stone and echo, that particular civic hush that makes you stand up straighter. I stood there a moment and filled my lungs. I'd made it. No more postponing, no more bargaining with people who treated my life like a ledger they controlled. My parents weren't there yet, but absence has a shape. It waited beside me like a shadow. Inside, the clerk called the case, the bailiff's voice ricocheted off wood paneling, and I raised my right hand. The oath was simple. The truth rarely is. When I took the stand, the room felt heavier, as if the air itself knew how much had been carried into it. The judge watched me over her glasses. The jurors leaned back, then forward, then still. To my right sat the prosecutor legal pad, squared with the edge of the table. To my left, my parents Alicia and Victor, both looking down as if the floor were safer than my face. I don't hate my parents, I said. But what they did is a crime. My voice didn't waver. I said what needed saying. They forged my signature, tried to sell my home without my consent, then filed a false police report claiming someone had impersonated me to sabotage the sale. They didn't make a mistake and panic. They made a plan and executed it. We walked the jury through the evidence piece by piece like stones across a river. A forensic handwriting report clear as day. The listing contract with my name and someone else's strokes. The email thread with confirming our daughter's approval typed by a person who knows me well enough to fake my tone. The police report full of lies written in official ink. Banknotes, timeline charts, phone records that stitched their choices to dates and times. Every exhibit tugged the same thread. They wanted what I owned, and they were willing to erase me to get it. When my mother finally took the stand, her lawyer treated her like crystal careful questions. Soft voice pauses long enough to let her gather herself. The kindness didn't change the shape of the truth. She folded her hands in her lap and stared somewhere just past the jury box. Selena was always independent, she said, voice thin at the edges. She never caused trouble. I thought just this once it would be okay. I didn't want to ruin her sister's wedding. The judge angled her head, reading the room and my mother at the same time. In the false police report, the judge asked even direct. The one claiming someone impersonated your daughter to interfere with the sale. Silence pulled tight across the courtroom. My mother's throat moved. A small nod, almost a tremor, broke the stillness. You could hear the court reporter's keys as she took that answer down like a confession. My father went next. He looked like a man walking along a plank he'd built with his own hands sturdy enough to hold, pointed at nothing but water. We realized partway through we'd gone too far, he said, fingers knitted together so hard his knuckles went pale. But it felt like there was no way back. He didn't look at me. He stared at the table as if honesty might be written there. The prosecutor stood, placed his pen down with deliberate care, and let the moment breathe before he spoke. No way back, he repeated almost gently. Then he straightened, or no willingness to stop. Let's be clear, this was not a parental lapse or a misunderstanding. It was coordinated. It was deliberate. A forged signature. A fabricated authorization. A malicious false report designed to erase the victim's voice and seize her property. The state will not call that family business. We will call it what it is, fraud. We lived inside that process for months. Direct, cross, redirect. Exhibits marked and admitted. The forensic handwriting report that laid my mother's version of my name beside my own letter by letter, and showed where the pressure faltered and where the slant betrayed the hand. The listing agreement with my approval dated the same afternoon. My phone records proved I was on a flight over the Atlantic. Emails in a thread where my parents described me as on board, complete with punctuation that tried to mimic the way I write. The police report official letterhead, official badge number lies cemented into public record. Piece by piece, the picture stopped looking like a family dispute and settled into something harder, simpler, undeniable. Verdict day arrived with a colder air than the week before, as if the building could feel what it was about to hold. The benches creaked as people shifted their weight, then fell quiet. I kept my hands folded and my eyes forward. The judge read without drama, which made the words land cleaner. In the matter of Alicia Bennett and Victor Bennett, she began on the counts of attempted fraud, forgery of private documents, falsification of public records, and filing a false accusation. This court finds the defendants guilty. Given the sustained and coordinated nature of the conduct and the harm to the victim, the court imposes a sentence of 1 year and 6 months imprisonment. Silence pressed against the windows. My mother cried in short, surprised sounds like someone who'd been holding her breath and only then remembered how to inhale. My father didn't move. I didn't celebrate, and I didn't collapse. What passed through me wasn't triumph, and it wasn't guilt. It was a long, steady exhale, the end of a breath I'd been keeping since childhood. In the hallway, I ran my fingers over the carved banister and felt the grain under my palm. The world had edges again. My name belonged to me. My life did too. A few days later, a text from my sister Mira lit up my phone. We met at the cafe with the wobbly tables where, if our parents were in a generous mood, we used to split one muffin 3 ways. She arrived wrapped in a coat 2 sizes too big, her hair pulled back like she wanted a clear view of the road ahead. Without our mother's opinions sitting on her shoulders, she looked younger, almost lighter. "I'm sorry," she said before the coffee cooled. The words came out fast like she had practiced them and wanted to get them right. "About the wedding, about posting. I didn't know they were trying to sell your house. You told me not to worry, and I didn't ask more. I didn't explain enough," I said. "And you were used to believing you were being protected." She bit her lip and nodded. "I'm trying to do it differently now, find my own place, my own paycheck." She didn't ask me for money. She didn't ask me for a plan. She asked for the dignity to try. I believed her not because she hit the right notes, but because the whole song sounded like someone ready to carry her own weight. "Live your life, Mira," I said. "I'll live mine." It wasn't a movie ending. It was 2 people putting down a load that never should have been theirs. Normal returned in small, almost invisible ways. I paid the water bill on time and didn't feel a cliff edge under every number. I fixed the cabinet hinge that had annoyed me since spring. I laughed at something dumb on TV and didn't stop halfway through to check if laughter was still allowed. Then a letter arrived from the detention facility. My mother's handwriting on the envelope tight and careful. I stood at the counter longer than I meant to thumb under the flap, ready and not. Dear Selena. It began no nickname, no instructions disguised as affection. Just my name. The sentences stumbled a little the way honesty does when it's had to push past pride. She wrote that she'd joined a cognitive behavioral therapy group, that every session felt like peeling back a coat she'd worn so long she forgot it was there. Fear, then vanity, then the conviction that love and control were the same language spoken at different volumes. I won't ask for your forgiveness, she wrote in a hand that wavered on the loops. I took your name and your dignity into my hands as if they were mine to barter. I am sorry. The words didn't fix anything. They didn't unforge a signature or unfile a report. But something in my chest unclenched, and in that bit of space I realized my shoulders weren't braced against the next hit. Weeks later, another envelope, my father's. Different pen, same effort to be plain. He wrote about all the years he had called silence keeping the peace when it was really surrender. About how easy it had been to let my mother's certainty do his thinking for him, and how that laziness had a body count even if the only thing it killed was trust. He didn't ask me to forget. He didn't call it complicated. He called it what it was. That mattered. I didn't write back. Not then. Reconciliation isn't a doorway you run through because someone finally held it open. Sometimes it's a bench you sit on until your legs remember how to stand. I stopped waking up angry. I stopped delivering speeches to the mirror that no one would hear. I started believing that forgiveness isn't a verdict. It's a practice. And practice can take time. Life grew again around that choice. Lucas and I found our rhythm in the house that almost slipped through our hands. Mornings, he stood at the stove tapping the spatula against the pan while I measured coffee into the filter, and the radio mumbled about weather fronts and baseball scores. Evenings, we opened the windows and let the day drift out, cut grass rain on warm pavement, a neighbor laughing 2 houses down. Some nights, we told old stories until the sharp parts dulled. Other nights, we read in the same room and didn't speak at all. Not perfect. Ours. Today, I sat at the same kitchen counter where I'd read their letters and wrote one of my own. I didn't perform grace I don't have. I didn't deliver punishment I no longer need. I told the truth. I remember everything. I haven't forgotten. I won't pretend it didn't happen. But I'm not living inside it anymore. I laid out boundaries in plain language, what contact could look like, what it would never be again, where my privacy begins and ends. I didn't promise a future I can't hold. I promised the present I can live with. This is my life. My name. My home. I took them back with both hands, and I intend to keep them that way. Whatever comes next will be chosen by me and my words on my time.